Hello there, I'm Adam Forbes. I'm the host of the Corporate Escapology podcast and the author of Corporate Escapology, the book. And today, my guest is Wilma MacDonald. Wilma spent quite a long time working in the banking sector. She started at Standard Life and then she worked at various contract roles in RBS and Tesco Bank and Sainsburys Bank. And she worked really, really hard. As she puts it, she's got this really strong work ethic, was pushing her to 12-hour days repeatedly, and she was partying in the other 12. And as a consequence, she burnt out. She started looking at her diet and she started exploring nutrition as a potential career option. And she studied and she still went back to other contract jobs and eventually did leave. And she connected a bit more with a really strong purpose about helping mothers, by which time she was a mother herself, to cope with some of the challenges of life and to try to regain some power. So she set up an organization called Maverick, which exists to help mothers take back the power. And she's also looking now at helping women that are going through menopause and perimenopause too, and looking back at coming almost full circle and helping corporates get better at helping their employees deal with this too. So I think fascinating podcast to come. So let's meet Wilma now. Hey Wilma, it's great to have you on the Corporate Escapology podcast today, this Friday morning. How are you doing?
I'm delighted to be here. I'm very excited about today for some reason.
This is the reason, of course. Brilliant. Well, I'm excited. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but let's start at the beginning, or near the beginning.
Okay.
With this choice at 17, 18, to go and study management, which I find really, really interesting. I mean, I don't know why I find it more interesting than being an engineer or being a scientist, but management sounds like you had quite grand aspirations from the start, knew where you wanted to be.
Yes, I wanted to be the boss. I just always remember that I wanted to be the boss. And so I grew up in the Outer Hebrides, which if you don't know is on the far northwest coast of Scotland. And there was 24 people in my primary school. So it was really small.
You're the boss of those 24, I'm guessing.
I don't know about that. But, and so I just remember, I grew up, I probably shouldn't have been watching LA Law at such a young age. But I remember watching things like LA Law and Dynasty and Dallin and all these things, like all these 80s power shows. And what was the other one?
You've got the shoulders there.
Yeah, I do have the shoulders. I'm with definite shoulders too. And I just knew that I had this feeling that I just wanted to be in charge. Maybe that's because I was the youngest of three sisters, so I was never in charge of anything. And I was one of these people who was really conscientious at school. I studied really hard, but then I kind of partied a lot as well when I probably shouldn't have been. So I was kind of stuck into kind of trying to find who I was and where I fitted in. And I really loved maths. Loved it. Oh, right, okay. And then university for me was more an escape. I just wanted to leave. I wanted to live in a city and I just wanted off the island. And I was 17 when I left and I went to, I went to Aberdeen, I studied management. And, I did lots of different things. I did economics, which I wasn't very good at. And I did accounting, which I was good at. And lots of different kind of entrepreneurship I absolutely loved, and that should have been kind of my idea as to what was going to happen. Absolutely loved the entrepreneurship bit, but I kind of coasted through the management studies course in that I didn't have to work. This is really bad. I would never say this to my son. I didn't actually have to work that hard to get the grades that I needed. Management at that point in time was kind of my way to get off the island and to get to university and to have the university experience and have a degree at the end of it. But when I got to the end of fourth year and I was like, oh, what happens now? So while everybody else was applying to graduate training schemes, I was like, you know what, I want to be a student. So off I went and did my master's in Glasgow in business information technology systems.
Party city though.
Yes. So I just transferred out to Glasgow and parted again for a year, but it was much harder. So I was a bit at a loss after that as to what to do, and I ended up back at Lewis, which was not my game plan. But that gave me a big shove, and after a year I actually ended up living in New York for a while. Yeah. That was a big That was a big culture shock. So I did an internship for a year in New York, and I worked in real estate development in New York.
Wow.
It was like a baptism of fire. But
how did you get that? How did you get that?
So
Jiu-jitsu like that?
There's an internship program called the MacDonald internship program, and what I found is when I decided I wanted to go to America, I wanted to live in New York for a year. And bear in mind, I was living in the Outer Hebrides at the time. I had no connections to New York. I had every other organisation, lots of exchange programs, but you had to find your own job. And when you don't have a visa, and it's 2 years after 9/11, it's really hard. So it was 2003, and but this MacDonald internship program found jobs for you, and they paired you up with so you had to do phone interviews with organisations in New York. So I had 6 phone interviews with different companies because nobody could understand me. Because I had obviously quite a strong accent at this point in time, and it's on the phone, and sometimes Americans don't understand Scottish accents at the best times, so over the phone. So I was really stressed out that I didn't know what I was going to do, but I ended up getting this job in real estate in New York, and honestly, it was the best things I've ever done. It was like living in a movie set, and I mean, we got paid hardly anything, but it really instilled a work ethic, probably too much of a work ethic, to be honest, because I got the New York work ethic, and it was amazing. Loved it. Really, it's just everything you think. Like they're building these huge big skyscrapers, and they're talking about billions of dollars, and I'm just in there going, "What is going on? It's mad." But I loved it. And then I went to New Zealand after that, and I just tripped and travelled around. And when I came back after being overseas for 2 years, I was 25, and I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" And I ended up just temping. I was temping in like Dundee, and then I moved to Edinburgh, and I was told I was unemployable, and I was just like,
25?
Yes, I was 25. I had no experience. I was told my degrees didn't matter. Didn't matter. I had a master's. Didn't matter. I'd worked in Europe. I was told I was unemployable.
Oh.
And did I want to work in a florist? And I was like,
yes, but
I was like, no, I want to be the boss. How am I going to be the boss if I work in a florist? These sliding doors moments. I keep wondering now, if I said yes, what would have happened? Anyway, I ended up, somebody offered me a temporary job in Standard Life, and the money was really good. And I was like, oh, don't know who Standard Life are, never heard of them. But apparently they're one of the biggest employers in Edinburgh. So off I went. And I was somebody's PA.
Okay.
And I'm a rubbish PA. Like, I'm not going to lie, I'm just not very good. But they seemed to like me, and I kind of bounced around being different people's PAs in their demutualisation program, and I didn't know what that meant either. And then somebody asked me, "Do you want to be a project assistant?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." But okay. So they signed me up for a year's contract, which I was like, wow, here it is. And I went off and did project assistant stuff. So that was my first insight into project management and all the language they use around project management. Like, it was all so new to me, but I put in my New York work ethic and I worked my butt off. And I lived 7 minutes from the office. So I was in the office all the time. Like, literally, I would work 9 till 9, 9 till midnight, whatever. I worked loads. And it taught me a lot. And then I got a permanent job in Standard Life after that. And I ended up staying.
No wonder that I think this probably
were like,
worked 12-hour days.
I parted the furniture, so I got a permanent job. And looking back, I was there for 5 years in total. And it was the right time to leave when I did. And looking back, I kind of bounced around various different places. And I worked with KPMG consultants and Deloitte consultants. And then I found out the true story about being a consultant. It's not all fun and games. It's not all Xboxes and hotel rooms. It's like working your butt off for your salary. So I knew it was too good to be true. So the 5 years, and I learned loads, and I kind of grew a lot as a person without sound that I don't mean that sound wanky, but I kind of, I developed a different skill set. I grew in confidence in how to approach people, and then I decided to take the leap into contracting, and that was in my early 30s. Yeah.
I thought that was, when I saw that, it seemed quite a brave move at that stage.
I think
to back yourself like that, because, contracting is about backing yourself. You're not relying on the company to manage you.
No.
And look after your career. You are saying, this is me now, I'm in charge of this.
And I think I never really thought of it like that. I just thought I knew it was always 5 years to the day. It was really weird. My last day in Standard Life was 5 years to the day that I started, which was really random. And I just knew that I needed to make a move now, and I wasn't getting the progress I wanted in Standard Life. I was so useful to people where I was that I wasn't. They wouldn't let me progress, and I was getting really frustrated. So when I left to go contracting, and when I took the job, I did the job I was doing in Standard Life, and I took it into one of the banks, I realised that I was doing a job that was 2 levels below what I was actually doing in Standard Life. So, and when I really liked contracting, I liked the freedom it gave me, and when I realised the first contracting job I took that I didn't like, that I was too overqualified, I just left.
Yeah.
And I got the other job that was the management level job, and I was good at it. And when I was contracting, I was always in demand. I was never, I could pick and choose. And if I decided I was going to leave, I was never worried about what was going to come next. Now, it was a different market than it is now. So this is a while ago. But I always, and when I left an organisation, I was always asked to come back. There was never animosity, and I always, again, I was with my husband. Well, he was a boyfriend at the time, but I didn't have children, so I could still work the hours. But I made a decision not to. I decided I wasn't going to be one of those contractors that worked 12 hours a day. I was just right, if I can't do what I need to do in my hours. So it was. I really liked it. And it was the freedom, and obviously financial benefits it gave me was quite massive as well. So I recommend it to everybody. And the thing was, my husband had done contracting in his 20s. So he was kind of just do it, just give it a try. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Now, I think the market is probably quite different now, so I'm not quite sure of what the market will be like now, because I do sometimes look.
What did you do when you say that it was you were in demand? How did you know that? Were you with an agency?
I was with a few different agencies.
Okay.
And I would so if they would always contact me first, and I would get a recommendation, or they would. I remember working in one bank, and an old boss phoned me and said, "Would you come work for me?" So I would, I had that kind of thing.
What were you doing then? So you built on that project management, program management?
Yeah, I was a senior PMO manager, so I was in charge of. I worked in lots of. So my speciality was in big transformation programs. Right. So I did lots of big transformation programs in Standard Life, and then when I left, there were some transformation programs in RBS. I was on the program that helped set up Tesco Bank, and I was in the program that helped set up Sainsburys Bank. And so that's it was kind of taking something massive and breaking it down into small little steps. And I was in charge of making sure that everybody was doing what they said they were going to do. And if they weren't doing what they said they were going to do, why not? What was going to change? brag statuses. I didn't know when I started to stand left what brag status was. And all the language you use.
I know, that's true.
It's bad. So yes, I was always chasing people down as to why is this red, why are you delivering, what's going to happen, how are you going to pull it back, all that kind of stuff. And God, PowerPoint was my life.
Yeah,
PowerPoint
you get to meet a lot of people, don't you, in a role like that too. You're very well, sometimes quite a junior level, you get exposure to an awful lot of very senior people because, and I was doing similar jobs at various times in BP like that, and it does get of course. I mean, there is an edge obviously to what you're doing, but you're also there to try and help people too. If something's not going, okay, can we won't, we'll give you a couple of days on before we can, but by next week we need to tell somebody that that's not happening. And so you don't have to be the iron rod whipping everybody. You can.
No. And
they can build relationships.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was really good at. So I was always really good at building relationships. That was so we did this strength finder when I was in Standard Life. I think it was Gallup strength finder. And my top strength is woo.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it was all about I think my top 5 were like woo, communication. I can't remember, but I always remember when somebody started in the team, I would always be the one set to welcome them and introduce them and take them around people and help them to get to know everybody. I just like communication, relationship building is something I'm really good at, and I think as part of my job in corporate, it was really, really important, because even though I was chasing people down and I was harassing them, I would do it in a way that was kind of engaging and didn't always make them feel pushed and shoved. Just because that's not the way to get people to do what you want.
No, exactly.
No.
Yeah, and
I got lots of exposure, and I did get lots of exposure more senior than me. And when I did work with these consultants, I was meeting the partners. I'd go out for drinks with the partners on a Thursday night. And like then they were like, "Do you want to come work for us?" I'm like, "No, that ship is sailed." So I did build relationships at really senior levels, and it was just parts of it were great. Parts of it were not. And that's, I'm never going to sit here and be like, if I loved it, I would still be there. I didn't love it, but there were some really positive aspects from it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I also particularly like about what we were saying is some of those positive aspects, they are, they're not always ones that you would write about on a CV. And I think this is why we often undervalue our offer beyond that job, because lots of the things we do, we just thought everyone was doing, or it just became part of almost culture to work like that way. But actually you come out of that, you realise that there are plenty of people who don't have the same kind of attention to detail, quality focus, or look at risk in the same kind of way, or manage people and stakeholders, particularly in a particular way that we're just sort of, it feels like it's instinctive, but it's not. It just becomes a learned behaviour because it's part of just how things work, and you've just got to slot into that. Otherwise, you're just like bashing all the time against the culture, and you eventually leave. But those things can be tremendously valuable if they are sort of twisted for different kinds of businesses or customers that you might want to serve later in life. And I'm sure you do that all the time. The program management, the relationship building, of course, as well.
But it's interesting because when I left and I finally left, like I left a couple of times because I kept getting drawn back. But when I finally left, I was like, this is it. I am never going to have to do project management, planning stuff again. I am out of here. Do not show me up a plan. I don't want to know anything. I thought, guess what? You have to do that stuff too when you run your own business. And I also use the principles of project management with my clients, because they have this big goal. They have this really big goal of how they want to feel and how they want to look. And it feels really far away and feels really unachievable. So what I do is like, well, keep that goal. We get you to set it. And then we break it down into small little steps. And we do these steps over and over again. And then we have update meetings, and then we see what's working, what's not, what needs to change. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of like, I still work in transformation. But instead of transforming banks, I'm transforming women to see their potential and to get them to feeling how they want to feel so they can live the lives that they want to live.
Well, that sounds a lot more of a mission you want to get up in the morning for than transforming the banks. But there's quite a lot before that.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of other things I want to talk about before you got to this point. The first one being burnout, which is quite a common feature, unfortunately, for people who work in business today, corporate or otherwise.
Yeah.
But you did say that you were you'd set some quite firm boundaries on the time that you were working out. Although you did say you were hobnobbing with partners and in the consultancies too. So what was it that you recognised that actually this was too much now, and it wasn't good for you, and health-wise it wasn't good for you to be working in that kind of way?
So I would say, I can't remember when it was before I left Standard Life. I got a really bad kidney infection one night. And I have something called polycystic kidney disease, which I inherited of my dad. And I was diagnosed when I was 21. Okay. But nobody ever said to me, I was just told, this is it. You can't manage it. You can't do anything with it. You just have to leave it, which is not the case. But anyway, and you live and learn. So I was in my late 20s and I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. Wow. When I was 29. And I met with
standard life. Then.
That was
you had that when you were doing the 12-hour
when I was doing the 12-hour day. So I was doing the 12-hour day, and I was all bar one was across the road. So if I wasn't at work, I was in all bar one. Such a cliche. And
the massive glass of wine that were like this size.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on a bottle going into a glass.
Yeah, on a Wednesday night. And I had I got a gym membership through Standard Life, but I never used it. And I was really petite and I was really slim anyway. So I'd be like, well, I don't need to use the gym because I'm skinny anyway. So it doesn't matter. It was never about how I felt, because how I felt was awful. I was so tired. And I was just like, I would have a double shot skinny latte with 2 sugars 3 times a day. I know.
And then no lunch needed.
No lunch needed, because how could you? And then Pret was on the way to work, so their coffee was terrible, but they had really nice croissants. So I'd had a chocolate croissant and a mozzarella croissant with my double shot skinny latte with 2 sugars. And every now and then I'd have a green tea. I didn't like green tea, but I would like to freak it in there. So every now and then I'd squeak one of them in. But yeah, when I went to the doctor for a checkup of my kidneys, I had high blood pressure, and she said to me, change your lifestyle and you won't have to take the medication. And I was like, nah, I'm not changing my lifestyle. Just give me the drugs. So that was when I was 29. And yeah, I was working lots. 29. Yeah. So I was 29. I was young. I had anyway, no idea. So, and then I got a really bad kidney infection that ended up in A&E when I was meant to be at my 5-star Christmas party. And I never missed Christmas parties, ever. But I missed this one. I was so disappointed. And it took me months to recover, months. And I just couldn't shake this feeling of being really, really tired and really drained. And I went to the doctor, I went to a herbalist, and eventually I went to see a nutritionist, because I was just like, I had tried everything. And I'd had this cold. By this point in time, I'd left Standard Life and I was out contracting. And I had this cold. I'd been coughing for 3 months. The entire time I was in this new job, I just coughed the entire time.
Lovely.
I know. I was like, come hire me. I'll just cough all over you. And within a week of what she'd given me, everything changed.
Really?
Oh, I was like...
Or was it just the no kind of mozzarella croissant?
No, she, we did, I'm not going to lie, we had to cut some stuff out and make some changes. And I was fascinated, completely fascinated by this. And I just couldn't believe the big change in how I felt.
What was it then? She was just changing the diet, or was it tablets?
I hadn't daily, and that the cough was in 2 days. And then, cleaned up what I was eating. But when I look back, I took some of what she said on board, but I kind of went to the extreme. So I went from one extreme to another. And I think that's a tendency for people who are high achieving and ambitious. Mm. I think it's kind of we want to do it, but we want to do it 100%. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went, the pendulum swung from being out every night.
Yeah.
Double shot coffees and whatever, and mozzarella croissants, to kind of, chicken and buckwheat every day for lunch, which wasn't even that great either. And I'm still going out, but I figured the chicken and buckwheat would counteract that. So I kind of made quite a few changes. And I remember sitting in RBS, I think it was, and I remember looking around and I'm thinking, I can't do this for the next 40 years. Mm. So I went to the stairwell and I phoned my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and said, I'm going to study nutrition. Are you okay with it? Because it's going to take a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And he was like, whatever. So I phoned up and I signed up to study nutrition. So I was doing it 3 years. I did it part-time for 3 years.
That's a commitment.
And I will 100% say that whole thing contributed to my burnout. Because it was a lot. And I remember at the time as well, I started getting really bad insomnia. And I was having to travel into London once a month. And I was on that one of my trips to London. I distinctly remember this. I was going through Edinburgh Airport. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I had my little outfit on with my stilettos. I had my coffee. And I was pulling my little suitcase behind me. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is what I imagined. This is what I wanted. Like, and now I can't think of doing anything worse. I was so unhappy. And I was like, but I've achieved exactly what 17-year-old me in the Outer Hebrides wanted to achieve. And I was very unhappy. And I was making all this money and I was just like, why? This feels really selfish and really weird, but I just couldn't shake that feeling of unhappiness. So not long before I graduated, I quit.
Graduated the nutrition.
So I was still studying.
You quit which one? The study or the job?
No, the work. I quit the job. I quit contracting. I just left. I worked in Edinburgh out of a clinic, and it was worse than bank. It was worse than the bank. I will name no names, but it was really stressful. It was really toxic. Yeah. And I was like, what have I done? I was like, what have I done? So I went back to the bank.
Oh. Go back to what you know.
I was so disappointed. I was really disappointed. And I was like, what have I done? What have I done? And then I was like, and then I remember being out walking one day and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the bank and see what happens. And an hour later, I got a phone call. So I got a 4-day working week. I got the day rate I wanted. Okay. But a few months in, I found out I was pregnant.
There's signs going on all around.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, how does this work? So I did obviously, and then I got my contract renewed and I was like, oh shit. And pregnant women will understand this because I'm really nervous about telling them. Really nervous. But I'm quite small, so I was starting to show quite quickly and people thought I just had a really good Christmas.
You loved the party.
And I started eating loads. Like I'd have this kind of like platters of stuff all over my desk and they were just like, what's I eating? And I told them it was fine. It was absolutely fine. But my contract got terminated early. Somebody actually said to me, you're lucky. What did somebody say to me? And I was like, wow, if I was a permanent person, you would never say that to me. It was something around me being pregnant. And I was just like, so I decided I would take 2 years paternity leave. And then he would go to nursery and I would figure out what to do after that. And in the interim, I was looking at advice out there for mums. And it was awful. It was all about bouncing back, all about baby, matching outfits and all that nonsense. There was nothing actually for the mum as how to recover and recuperate and nourish herself and all this depletion thing. And speaking to mums, their default was, I'm tired all the time. And I wasn't that tired. I was tired, but I wasn't exhausted. And my small human was a terrible sleeper and is still a terrible sleeper. So I was like, well, what am I doing that could help other people? And how can I use my nutrition to help other people? And I'll be honest, mums terrify me, or they used to until I became one. And then I kind of realised that we are a neglected demographic. And unless it's about us bouncing back, nobody gives a toss. So that's when I decided to use my nutrition and do exactly what I wanted to do, not what other people were telling me to do. And I started in the background setting up and gathering information and ideas as to what I was going to do. And that turned into Maverick Motherhood as to what I do now. And it's taken me obviously a while. And then I'm now at the stage, so we're in 2024 now. I'm now at the stage where I'm kind of like, okay, I want to pivot and change the business. So I'm expanding it to work with perimenopausal women, because I am. And we are another neglected bunch. And, I have a small human, and he doesn't care that I have the rage every now and then. So it's been a journey, shall we say, to get to where I am. And like I say, in hindsight, I probably would have done some things very differently. And in other ways...
What are you doing? So tell what are you doing to help those...
Yeah.
Those, so, and I know a lot of these women, to be honest. I live with one. Yeah, the previous bit you were doing with the mothers, which we're still doing, and of course the So I mean, I think help me understand how to help other people.
Exactly. Well. So the thing, what I'm doing at the moment, and how I'm kind of like doing a whole restructure pivot just now. So I had huge life. Like, both my parents died recently, and I was just like, what am I doing with life, and what do I want to carry on? So like, life never stops, and you always have to kind of like take it as it comes. And then, like I say, I'm now 45, my son is 7, and I started noticing changes in me and my behaviour and how I was operating in the world. And lots of my friends started talking about this, and I was like, what's going on? So I, at the moment, work one-to-one with women for 6 months, and we look at what they eat, how they move, sleep. Sleep is huge for me. I'm obsessed with sleep because it's always such an issue with me. Sleep, like everything. Like, we take like a 360 view as to how they live, and we make small changes. So basically, I use project management principles to get them to where they want to be, because they're here and they feel tired, exhausted, brain fog. They're putting on weight. They don't understand why. They've got, a lot of them like me, geriatric mums, older mums who have small children. That term drives me nuts. Our teenagers and like puberty and perimenopause together, great combination. Yeah. So we have this kind of like perfect storm of where they are now, but they want to be over here, but they don't know how to get there. So I know how to get there, and it's not as huge and overwhelming as we are led to believe it is. So I put in place these small steps, and we have accountability, we have budget allocated, we change and like pivot or whatever, depending on what's happening, and I always deliver. I've never not delivered anything in my life. So I always deliver where they want to go, because, actually once they start looking at what's going on and we put the simple basic things in place, that's when when they start feeling a difference, they want to keep going. And we're told so often that this is just the way it is. Woman, you've got children, if you're ambitious. And it's like, we survived the motherhood penalty, and now we're being faced with the menopause penalty. And then we have these wonderful, fantastic, ambitious women who are at the height of their careers thinking of leaving. And then if they do leave, that's when we have things like pension gaps, earning gaps, exhaustion gaps. And it all kind of feeds into one another. And I just want women to realise that it's not just the way it is. We do not have to sit and suffer. And we've been told for so long that we are ruled by our hormones, and that's just the way it is, and it's going to be awful. You're going to be a hot, sweaty mess who's full of rage. Okay. So just get used to it. And I'm like, no, that's not just the way it is. There's always something to be done.
I mean, I'm fairly sort of modern man, I would say. That's my wife, she might have a different view, but I'm staggered at myself how ignorant I was when I was in a corporate job. And I worked with a woman particularly who I love dearly. And I think I probably thought, something must be going on for her. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea of like how much was probably going on for her. And yet she was coping, just like I was, by the way, with the job. She's got all this stuff going on. I mean, I'm there thinking like, what's my next career move going to be? And should I get a new car? all these kind of, and should we move house? I mean, I'm not just kind of like selfish things, but like what's good for the family and stuff. But like, nothing is going on, particularly in my body, that is making me feel rage, particularly, or easily upset about anything, or, that much questioning my confidence. Like I see so many women, face it's a huge like transformation, like you say. So I think your approach is fascinating too, how you're applying that. Again, feels like an instinct, but it's actually learned skills about how to do this to help. Because I think there's two things really struck me. One is that those small changes, because that's probably the only way these things will really stick, rather than these big swings that we do, the green tea, and then we go back to the skinny latte. But also the sense of isolation where women particularly just feel like it's just them going through this. I'm sure my mum just felt like it was her going through this. And she had no support from 3 sons and a younger daughter and a bloke who didn't really understand any of this and didn't want to get too close to it either. So the loneliness, I think, of dealing with something, that's also obviously what you're combating, because you're raising this up and making people realize this isn't just a one-off situation. It doesn't just happen and then disappear a month later. This is happening over a decade, maybe.
It is.
And we're also relying on these women, usually in families, to be the anchor, holding everything together in the family too. I mean, I'm at home, but my wife is holding the family together. No question.
Yeah, and that's
what I keep my nice room here.
Yes, and that's what I keep saying to women. They're kind of like, I don't have time. I've got too much to do. And I know from my own personal experience, if I'm unwell, things start unraveling quite quickly.
And how do you feel now building this compared to building other stuff you were doing in the past? How do you feel about yourself now?
I feel really confident in myself. So, like, say 5 years ago, I would never have done this. I would never have pitched myself to you. I would never have gone on screen. I would never probably have put myself out to social media or LinkedIn.
Really?
Whereas now, I 100% believe in what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And I was doing some filming yesterday as well with somebody, and I really want to contribute to closing this gender health gap, because I think when we close that, that's where we can start closing other gaps. And I know I'm one person, but I'm going to figure it out somehow, because I think once we elevate women to where they want and need to be, that's when we can make some real positive changes in our own families, and then that's just a ripple effect. And I am 100%, I have a lot of more self-belief and self-trust, and, things are not, when you set your business up, it's not all smooth sailing. It's not all kind of like ding, 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 money in the bank and, everything's going swimmingly. There's real lows as well. And don't get me wrong, I do still sometimes go on to Indeed and see what's happening around, and I would think, I wonder what happens if I call somebody up. But the thing that stops me is when I speak to my clients and I get feedback as to how much what we've done together has changed their lives. I have a little feedback folder on my email, and if I'm ever having wobbles, which I do quite a lot, I go and have a look. I have a read. I have a read of that, and I remind myself as to why I do what I do. And then my next move is to actually get into these corporates, get back into the corporates. But as me now, as somebody who supports women with menopause and motherhood, and making sure that, because I know myself, when I started looking after myself properly, my productivity and focus was unreal. So if I had been working 12 hours with the focus that I have now, I'd have kind of, it would have been completely different.
Yeah. There's so many things I love about the story there, but particularly I feel like there's this way of coming back a few times for you, whether it's using your skills, and probably lots of the women that you're dealing with are in these jobs, so there's empathy there, so you're using that corporate experience of knowing what that world is like for them. There's no point just like being some, no disrespect for some like academic who's never worked in that, giving lots of theory about how this is, but if you've actually been in that environment, you know what life is like there. You're a mother as well, you understand those pressures, that gives you massive authenticity and credibility there. But there's a payback, it feels to me. That's what you're doing there. And then eventually there's this even bigger payback where you go back to these corporates and see if you can help at scale there, help that become more systemic and part of the culture in those organizations that liberates and empowers and makes women feel, equal in the workplace and then ready to just, use all the amazing talents and that they have to help these businesses become the modern businesses that we all need them to be.
Yeah. And I think that's the key thing is like, we need modern businesses. We need the culture change. And we don't want, it's not just kind of like, let's come in and give a talk at lunchtime and see what happens. I've sat through many of them, many lunch and learns and Zoom calls, but they don't actually, we need action. We need accountability. We need it embedded and we need it led from the top. And I think it's becoming more, like a lot of my clients are high levels, like directors, and we have, so they are interested. Whether their organisation is a different thing. So there is definitely an interest from senior management levels because they know they're not performing as well as they could be. So, yeah, and I love how you summarise it. There's always coming back around. And I would never have thought that I would be using my project management skills and I'd want to go back into corporates. But I know what it's like to work in a corporate environment.
Yes.
And a high pressure.
Why would you not use that experience? I think that's been a massive lesson for me. For a long time, I just thought, right, okay, I want to go and work with startups, like as far away as I could from corporates. But over time, I've just come back because that's where I have the experience. That's where I can add more value to those startups or to other businesses. So it's foolish to turn your back on something that has contributed to who you are and where you can be most helpful. And yes, you can go and help lots of individuals. That's lovely to do that. But actually, you can have more impact if you work with a small number of corporates and have, culture change across those organizations. And that's far better for society, really, than the ones and twos. But you've learned your trade through the ones that, the ones and twos, or but the individuals, you learn your trade, you practice there, you build your credibility, you build your network, and then you go back and say, look, what I've done here, imagine if I could do that for the company. That's really powerful. And that's where I see the future of where I want to go. And it's definitely where I see it. And you know what, and I think our generation, I'm taking you around the same age as me, is like you got a job, you went to school, you went to university, you got a job, and that was it. You stayed there and you keep quiet. And even if you hate it, it's a job, it's money, and it's good money. So you stick it out and you progress, and then you retire and you start playing golf. That's not the case anymore. And I think we have to sometimes look at the bigger opportunities that we have. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Wilma. Where can people find you? So where can people find Maverick Motherhood? So my website is maverickmotherhood.co. I am on LinkedIn, which is Wilma MacDonald, Maverick Motherhood, and Instagram is Maverick Motherhood as well. So these are the main things. There will be you'll see some shifts and stuff happening, but the core thing is that I still support women one-to-one for 6 months. And then I also work in corporates and doing speaking and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all very exciting. I absolutely love it. And it's never just the way it is. You never have to settle. Do not settle. Don't settle. What a good ending. Do not settle. Thanks very much. Bye now. Thank you.